are being destroyed through our food chain in what the government calls the depopulation or depopulation policy. It was talked about in the Executive Intelligence Review quite openly right during the time of the Vietnam War by McNamara, who's then the Secretary of the State, to the EIR staff, which operates out of Washington, D.C., the March of 81 issue. And you can call I forget the area code for Washington, maybe it's 302, 301 or something, and you can ask information for the Executive Intelligence Review magazine, and you can get your own copies of those articles. And I talked about the Vietnam War, how Agent Orange was explored into human, stopping human reproduction. We talked about vitamin A and D in milk, how that destroys the vitamin A and D in your body because synthetic vitamins placed in the milk destroy natural vitamins in the body, which then makes you prone to heart disease. We talked about the man-made virus known as the AIDS virus, which feeds off of the destruction of the ozone layer, which is also becoming part of the commercialization of the environment process that America is going through, so that the consumer is taught one thing and when really something else is going on, and of course to make money off of it. For example, air conditioners, freon gases do not affect the ozone layer. High-flying jet aircraft does. This was brought out by the Global 2000 report in 1982, which was published during the Reagan administration, which is attainable at the government printing office bookstores around here. I'm sure they have one here in Seattle. So as a result of that, when you get your air conditioning equipment worked on, instead of paying 10 cents on the dollar, you pay a dollar on a dollar now for the chemicals and the labor and all the things that have to be done to go into your refrigeration systems and heating systems and cooling systems. With the incoming AIDS virus, which was inoculated in a homosexual community in 1978 in San Francisco, 2,000 individuals were inoculated with a virus that was completed at Langley, Virginia, the CIA base, and it was a marriage of a cattle bovine virus and a sheep Vishnu virus. And when it was injected into humans, it feeds on a bacteria that's found in the anal canal. So they naturally picked on homosexuals because this was a good place to get it off the ground. They were like walking farms for the AIDS virus. And by 1981, all 2,000 of the ones that had been injected with this hepatitis B virus died. A lot of the serums that you have today that you get inoculated with to prevent different things, polio vaccines, different kinds of vaccines, are oftentimes laced with different things to see what they're going to do on a broader spectrum to the populace that they lace it with. They've inoculated children in Texas with the equivalent of the Legionnaire's disease. They inoculated in 1971 or 61 in Mobile, Alabama, 1 million people with cancer. I'm sure you saw in the newspaper where finally that was exposed. They created huge plans called Alternative 1, 2, and 3, where the government had ways to leave this planet in the case of an all-out invasion or an all-out war. They've created landing bases on the moon and Mars, which you don't even know about. NASA's a big joke. We have a vehicle called the Aurora that takes off and lands. It's a single-stage re-entry vehicle with 6 different propulsion systems. I've seen it within 300 feet of it, 600 feet long. So basically, the American public has no idea in hell what's going on worldwide or even what's going on in your backyard, unless you're really on top of things and you have exposure. I have exposure into the CIA. I have annual communications with them. I worked 15 years with the federal government. I had a secret clearance. I've been on almost every nuclear base and air base that you can name in the continental United States, and I've been in almost every laboratory in this lifetime.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If you are privy to all this knowledge and they know that you are doing it, and they're aware that you are getting lectures on it,
right,
giving all this information out, and then they're so miserable, why are they still doing it? Why haven't they stopped it?
They won't, because they're miserable too and they're scared. And they have a thing called Project Awareness right now that's through people like Steven Spielberg and George Lucas and a lot of different awareness programs. You'll see it on the advertisement for the American Express card with a little EB on there. They're subtly releasing this. They've chosen Timothy Good through some of his books to release a lot of this information. Bob Osler, a NASA scientist, is releasing this information. I'm not the only one doing it. There's several people doing it now. I also have had protection for a number of years. There have been attempts made on my life. There's a book called The Promise that's written. It's in our tape series. We're out of print on the book. You can get it with the tape series. It's up at our booth. That goes into some of my life experiences before Project Awareness was. I took on the government twice. I won both times. That's also in The Promise, even to the point where they had to have congressional legislation when I pointed out some flaws in the constitutional laws as they were being applied. So I have been known to do a little freedom fighting too. I think that runs in the family. My great-great-great-grandfather was Ethan Allen. He started the Revolutionary War in this country. So, and my great-uncle was Alexander Graham Bell. My father brought the London Bridge over, put it in Havasu City because he was a well-known scientist. So I come from a kind of a very powerful, very kinky, aristocratic family that has tremendous ties worldwide. And you can screw around with me all you want. If you knock me out of the scene, there'll be two more just like me to replace it momentarily. So I think that that's pretty well established by now. We've had some amazing group sessions, group encounters in Europe, and even in this country with UFOs and extraterrestrials. I've had groups of 500 point-blank face Pleiadians, and at the same time, for example, when I was doing a concert in 1988 in Marnau, in the Bavarian Alps, about 2 o'clock in the morning, I was doing what's called a Firestar concert. And one of the things that we do is we use music. Music is a very powerful tool. And I have taken a Pleiadian ship sound and broken it down and created a whole music scenario from it using linear arithmetic synthesizers made by Roland and Korg and a couple other companies. And I was playing a concert. This is where I met my wife in 1988, and I had about 800 people in attendance at a channeling conference at a concert hall in Bavaria. And we had what's called a Firestar, which I'll show you a picture of, which is a communicating and channeling device that draws in extraterrestrials. It's pretty much everybody that's ever used one of these has had tremendous experiences with it. And about 2/3 of the way through the concert, with this huge Firestar up on the stage, about 30 people walked out. And at first I thought I was playing some really bad music or something, because I had a Pleiadian ship playing through the speaker system, and I was putting sound down on top of it. I was playing one of the songs in the Fellowship album. And what happened was about 4 or 5 ships were hovering outside the concert hall, and I heard this tremendous roar, and I saw all these red lights. And what happened is they had scrambled, the German Air Force had scrambled their Mirage jets, and they were chasing the ships. At the same time, the police department was cordoning off the entire town to figure out what this was going on. So I mean, these are some of the things that have happened. This was right in Billy Myers' backyard. We were 150 miles from his house, where you've seen all the Meyer books, I'm sure. So this is just some of the stuff that goes on. But anyhow, I don't want to get into phenomenon today. I want to get more into the hardcore part of science and how you can help yourselves biologically, spiritually, mentally, and every other which way overcome some of the limitations that you're going to have to deal with, and how to maybe recognize, just about every time the FDA says something's no good, go get it, right away. Because the FDA just recently, a group of doctors, a huge group of doctors sponsored by a University of Illinois, just did a huge survey. And one of the things on the population destruction program is heart problems. That's one of the things. And they want you to really believe that cholesterol is bad for you. Cholesterol is not bad for you at all. If you don't have enough of it, your body will produce plenty of it. What's bad is when you have the wrong LDL, HCl levels, the lipoprotein cholesterol levels. So it has to do with, there's a new test out now, and Dirk Pearson talks about it in his book, Life Extension 2, that really tells you if you have a cholesterol of, say, 250, that might be okay. That might be excellent for some people. You need to know what your LDL levels are also. So one of the things they do is they attack the cholesterol, and that we found that regardless of what your cholesterol is, the tests have shown if you take 500 or 400 units of vitamin E a day and 1,000 or 2,000 grams of vitamin C a day, your heart attack risk goes down about 90%. It was also a proven fact that anybody in Russia, Ernest Krebs proved this in Russia years ago with Kirlian photography, and that was developed by a guy by the name of S.D. Kirlian, who came out of Czechoslovakia, that anybody taking B15 would never get a heart attack unless they were really prone to it and they really had some bad habits and they got into B15 too late, because it carries mass quantities of oxygen down to the heart. So one of the first things the FDA did was make B15 illegal. Then, of course, they went into And then, of course, when you take your nitrites and all this other stuff in your foods, this causes the body to start going into a dextrorotary rather than a laborotary, a right spin versus a left spin, electron flow. Your body, if you look at all your amino acids in a health food store, it always says L-lysine, L-arginine, L, because it's left spin. So what do? Make Laetrile illegal. Why do they do that? Because it gets rid of all the effects of right spins. What are some chemicals that are right spin? Well, Chiari, cyanide, nitrites, poisons are right spins. So naturally, they don't want you to have left spin vitamins in your system. So in our vitamins, we put all these things in. We just don't list it on the label. They're all in there. We've got we got all the nitrolicide family, which is B12 through B17. And I formulate worldwide. My vitamins are dispensed by prescription in Europe because I got the medical community over there to go along with our vitamins because they know they work, and they're more concerned. Even though they have in Germany, they do have the equivalent, and Japan, the equivalent of an FDA. They don't have the power that the FDA has over here. But the FDA over here is getting exposed as a bunch of jerks. And as you know, as we speak, they're trying to criminalize the right to have herbs or vitamins or amino acids. I spent 15 years with the National Health Federation going all over the place in the U.S. Battling the FDA. Finally, I got tired of it because you push them back for a few years and then they come back again. So the best thing is, like Einstein says, the growth-resistant generation just dies out and gets out of the way. That's the basic way to look at it. Okay, now the first thing I want you to become aware of in this little scenario here is this chart. Our bodies are made up of oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, and carbon. And hydrogen is a very important element in the body. The oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen are gases, and the carbon is a pyramid shape. Okay? And the pyramid shape is what all these chemicals and all these stresses try to distort. If you keep the body, the carbon atom in the body, for example, a red blood cell, the heme's in the red blood cell, the iron atoms, in this shape, the red blood cell will function. And I'll demonstrate that with my glue test here, which I did yesterday. If I can find my glue, I think it's in my bag here somewhere. But the bottom line is, everything comes from energy. And you got to go back to the energy level first. And we teach everything as the rainbow. You start with a rainbow because your body basically is light. And so there are 7 colors to the rainbow. Each color of the rainbow represents a consciousness. The red color represents the first ray, or the will, the father energy. The second ray and the father energy is anchored through red. It's anchored through the red organs in the body, one of them being the pituitary gland. The blue is love, wisdom. The blue is the healing energy. It's the sun energy, the Christ energy, and that's anchored through the heart. Everything relating to blue relates to that energy at one point. Green represents the thyroid gland, is the female, it's the Holy Ghost, and it's a synthesis of the first 2. Those are the primary 3 forces. You can break down every substance into one of those forces. For example, vitamin A, which is very powerful in the immune system, is a red force, it's a will force. Whereas if you get into the B complex, you go down to the 4th energy, which is a compassion energy, or a yellow force. And when you begin to relate to vitamins, to the feeling that you do or don't have, for example, if you were waking up in the morning and you just don't have the will to do something, you can bet that your body needs something in the immune system which is directly related to red, the will. So the will, you probably would need vitamin A, you would probably need chromium. By the way, chromium is the first element that you would take when you start getting a runny nose. Chromium is the first element that you would take at any sign of any kind of physical symptom coming on, a scratchy throat. And any AIDS researcher will tell you that the first thing if you start taking if you're tested HIV positive is chromium, because chromium produces helper T cells. Then, once your helper T cell count goes up in the white blood cell region, then you should start taking large amounts of vitamin A, and then large amounts of vitamin C, which binds the cells together. A lot of people make the mistake when they come down with a cold or a scratchy throat of jamming in large amounts of vitamin C. But that's wrong, because the life force in the body is now being directed towards a virus that's giving you a cold. How many of you come down with a cold, you take a large amount of vitamin C and it doesn't do anything? Typically, most of the time it doesn't. Eventually the cold goes away and you think the vitamin C did something. It's because you didn't have your life force directed in the right area for the vitamin C to feed the right entity. You know? Same thing with antibiotics. Antibiotics will fight bacteria in the body, but they won't fight viruses. They'll feed them. So you've got to understand how nutrition works and really get a working knowledge of it. And that's why these different ray colors have a lot to do with it.